So in our last part, we have already configured our Raspberry Pi to be connected from a laptop using SSH or VNC viewer. So in this episode, we will actually try to connect to our Raspberry Pi using these two tools. Okay, so first we'll have a look at VNC viewer. This gives you a full access to desktop and everything. And if you just want to have access to the command line interface, then we can use SSH. SSH is standing for Secure Shell. PuTTY is a software that allow us to do the SSH using with this Raspberry Pi. And a third is understanding the NAT routing and DHCP. So before we get into VNC and SSH, I think it is good to understand what is NAT routing and DHCP. So it is here in the next slide. So if you see, this is our home router and this is our home network. So NAT routing is actually NAT stands for network address translation. So this IP addresses are all private IPs which are assigned by this router. So, and these are not public IPs. So if someone from outside this network want to try to ping this IP, he will get no response because these IPs are translated by our router and assigned by our router. When we want to send something to the internet, our router is actually making it possible. Okay, it packages the data as such a way so that it can go to the internet, and when some response come back, it forward the response to the same device from where the request is generated. Okay, so this is network address translation. So these are not public, so keep that in mind. And DHCP is dynamic host configuration protocol. So dynamic host means this addresses, so your laptop and maybe your tab. So when next time, so if you shut them down and next time when you switch them on, it's not guaranteed that they will again get the same 100.3 100.2 address. So these addresses are changed dynamically. So your Raspberry Pi will also be assigned an address by this router. So firstly, that will be a network address translated, so it is not a public IP, first thing. And second thing is it is dynamic, so next time when your Raspberry Pi comes up, it may be different. So we have shown one way how you can have a fixed IP every time your Raspberry Pi comes online. Okay, so let us get into it. So now we will have a look how to connect to our Raspberry Pi remotely using a laptop or desktop. So I'm using a laptop here, so I'm now recording my screen of the laptop. So I'm no more using the TV monitor or the HDMI screen. Okay, so to access that, what you need to do, you need to download and install VNC viewer, because VNC server is already running in our Raspberry Pi with IP address 192.168.0.105. So what do we need to do? We need to connect to that using VNC viewer. So this is a client, so we type this here 192.168.0.105. okay, and press enter. So it will ask you for the username and password, and it might show an additional window just to confirm that should you continue or not when you do it first time. That is not my first time, that is why it skipped that stage, but it's just only a proceed button. So that is it, and after that you need to provide this username and password. If you have changed the password, you use that changed password, and also you may or may not remember your password, up to your choice. Okay, and you then press OK. So this is now we are accessing our Raspberry Pi desktop using our laptop. Okay, so you can just check if things are working nice. Okay, so it is the same thing that we can see there, right? So you can access everything. You can access command and interface. Okay, or you can run any Python code or anything you can do from here. Okay, so this is one way of accessing your Raspberry Pi, and there is another way, like if you just only want to access the CLI, that is command line interface. So that is the SSH way, Secure Shell way. So one useful software for that is PuTTY. Okay, so you can download and install this. So you need to keep this SSH selected, and then just put your address port 22. Okay, if you want you can save this setting here. Sorry, you can name it something like Raspberry, and then you save it. So from next time you just select Raspberry and all this will come up by itself. Okay, and then you say open. So it opens up the CLI only, not the whole monitor. Okay, so you need to log in Pi, and you need to you give the correct password. When you type the password, it will not print here. That is a Linux feature only. So here we are. So if you want to see if we are really into our Raspberry Pi or not, you can like just type ifconfig. Okay, so here you can see we have got the Raspberry Pi IP address here. So this is how you can get into Raspberry Pi CLI using PuTTY. So now I can exit from it. So these are the two ways you can access your Raspberry Pi remotely, and you don't need to connect to the HDMI interface. So every time your Raspberry Pi will not get the same IP address like we got here 105. Maybe next time when it boot up it will get 107 or 101. So how to know that? So for that you need to access your router. So like for TP, so these are there in your router manual. So like for TP-Link, for my router, this is the address. Okay, 192.168.0.1, and then you go to DHCP and connect and click on DHCP client list, and you can see what IP is assigned to your Raspberry Pi. So this is one way to know the IP address, so that you know what to connect using your Raspberry Pi. Okay, and another so there is another way of like get a static IP on your Raspberry Pi. So every time your Raspberry Pi it boots up and it gets the same IP, so that is very useful. So in that case it will not change, right, the IP address, and you need not go and check into your router DHCP list. So for that, so this is the way, but please keep in mind, like if you are using a mobile phone as a Wi-Fi router, then probably your internet may not work properly, because it will try to connect, it will try to get this kind of IP address, the static IP that you will be deciding here, but your mobile phone may not supply it the same way, thus in the same format. So in that case your internet will not work properly. Okay, so that kind of problem might happen, but anyway, if you are in a home router, then I'll show you how to get a fixed IP address. Okay, so let's go, let me start again. So you get into your terminal. Okay, so this is all I am doing on my laptop screen only. So what you need to do, super user do sudo. So you need to change this configure file, actually nothing else. Sudo nano. So nano is the CLI editor. We will work on it as a super user because it is a configuration file that we want to change. Then this file is kept under etc folder, and the file name is dhcp cd.config, means conf. Okay, and you press enter. So this will open up. Okay, and what you need to do, there is already some so in this, if you were like using a Ethernet, so you just remove comment from this 4 lines. So remove the hash from here. Okay, so remove the hash from here, remove hash these hashes. Okay, and then you just put here what you want. So before /24 you can write like 105 or 104. So this is for Ethernet. If you are connecting it through LAN, like wireless LAN, I mean Wi-Fi, then you should be, you can copy this part, this whole part. Okay, then paste below here, and then again just change this ETH0 to WLAN0 the same way it shows here. You can see here W here, just under ETH0 WLAN0. So you just put that WLAN0 static underscore WLAN0 here, then what is the static IP that you want, and then also please remove these 4 hashes. So this way every time when it boots up it gets the same IP address, so you need not go and check with your router what is assigned here. Okay, so this is how you can easily access your Raspberry Pi from outside.